Welcome to eCareDiary.com's Caregiver Tips and Clips. I'm your host Meghna Giridhar. Each week we will focus on a caregiving issue in the form of a short education video. The subject of today's video is Understanding HIV/AIDS. December 1st was World AIDS Day. The theme for this year was Focus, Partner, Achieve, an AIDS-free generation. Before we get in-depth into AIDS, we have to first understand what HIV is. HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. This particular virus can only infect human beings. HIV weakens your immune system by destroying important cells that fight diseases. A deficient immune system can't protect you. A virus can only reproduce itself by taking over a cell in the body of its host. The difference between HIV and other viruses is that the human immune system can't get rid of it, as is the case with other viruses such as a common cold. You have it for life. So what is AIDS? AIDS is a disease causing severe loss in the body's immune power, making it difficult to fight infections due to lowered resistance. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. AIDS is not genetic but acquired after birth. Immuno, which is the body's immune system, includes organs and cells that work to fight diseases. Deficiency is when your immune system lacks the capability to function normally. AIDS is a syndrome rather than a single disease because it's a complex illness with a wide range of symptoms. AIDS is the final stage of HIV infection. Here are some recent statistics pertaining to HIV and AIDS. More than 1.2 million people in the United States are living with HIV, and almost 1 in 7 are unaware of their infection. The estimated incidence of HIV has remained steady at about 50,000 new cases per year. In 2012, around 47,000 people were diagnosed with HIV infection in the United States. In the same year, an estimated 27,000 people were diagnosed with AIDS. An estimated 13,834 people with an AIDS diagnosis died in 2011. By race, African Americans are the most affected. The peak of the HIV epidemic was in the mid-1980s. That stabilized in the mid-1990s. This graph provides information for 3 groups. The first is MSM, which stands for men who have sex with men. MSM numbers in the mid-1980s were more than 75,000, which then fell to less than 18,000 per year by early 1990s. However, since then, it's increased at a rate of 29,000 per year. The IDU group is for infections among injecting drug users. HIV infections fell from 35,000 annually in the late 1980s to 3,900 new infections in 2010. The number of new infections among heterosexuals increased during the 1980s. Since then, new infections have remained relatively stable in recent years, with 12,100 infections occurring in 2010. Let's now look at some ways through which HIV is transmitted. Body fluids from an HIV-infected person can transmit HIV. Some of them include blood, semen, rectal and vaginal fluids, and breast milk. Having unprotected sex with an infected person is a source. Sharing needles, syringes, or being struck with an HIV-contaminated needle could cause HIV. It can also be passed from mother to child during pregnancy, birth, or breastfeeding. Receiving blood transfusions, blood products, or organ transplants that are contaminated with HIV is a major source of transmission. HIV infection comes in 3 stages. The first stage is called acute infection, and it typically happens within 2 to 6 weeks after exposure. The initial symptoms of acute HIV infection are often compared to those of the flu and may include headaches, diarrhea, nausea, fatigue, sore throat, a red rash that doesn't itch but usually seen on the torso, fever, swollen glands, and muscle and joint pains. If you're worried that you might have been exposed to the HIV virus, it's important to get tested as soon as possible. Here are some of the HIV tests. Standard tests are blood tests checking for HIV antibodies using blood urine samples or fluid collected from the mouth. Antibody tests detect HIV up to 20 days earlier than standard tests. In-home test kits screen blood and saliva for HIV antibodies. There are two available in the US that can be bought at local stores. The home access HIV-1 test system requires a small blood sample that is collected at home and sent to a lab. Results are available by phone in 3 business days, and the identity of the user is kept anonymous. These are basic tests. Doctors do a more detailed examination and have the person undergo blood chemistry tests, urine tests, cholesterol tests, and tests for sexually transmitted diseases. In addition, they take account of CD4 cells. CD4 is a protein that lives on the surface of infection-fighting white blood cells. HIV targets these immune cells. There is the viral load test to measure how much of the HIV virus is in the blood. Drug resistance testing is to ensure the strain of HIV you have isn't resistant to any medications. In the mid-1990s, people with HIV could progress to AIDS in just a few years. Today, a person who is diagnosed with HIV and treated before the disease is far advanced can have a nearly normal life expectancy. Here are some resources that provide detailed information and support to those suffering or caring for those with HIV or AIDS. There's the Gay Men's Health Crisis, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Health Resources and Services Administration, which is a part of the US Department of Health and Human Services, AIDS Info, and Services and Advocacy for Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Elders. Thank you for joining us today. To access more caregiver tips and clips, visit us at www.ecarediary.com. Until next time.